This offseason is definitely going to be a very active one for the New York Rangers as they look to make this team a whole lot better than what it was from this past season. But in today's video, we're going to take a look at a certain player who could possibly get a contract extension with the team, as they already handed out quite a few during this past season, but of course can now hand out one to Artemi Panarin this offseason to extend him on a longer-term deal, as if he doesn't sign an extension, he will become an unrestricted free agent next offseason, meaning he can walk away for absolutely nothing, which the Rangers definitely might not want to see happen. So in today's video, we're going to take a look at what an extension for Artemi Panarin could look like there, the kind of cap hit and the years that could possibly come with that extension, as well as we're going to talk about whether or not a potential trade makes sense for Panarin, as there have been some fans kind of talking about a possible trade here with Panarin. So we're going to talk about whether or not that makes sense for the team and whether or not it's actually possible to actually see happen. So let's get right into it here. And first off, start off by taking a look at Artemi Panarin and kind of what he did from this past season, as of course he ended up having a pretty good season there, put up some good numbers, and ended up finishing the season with 89 total points, 37 goals, 52 assists, 80 games played. Once again, had another above point per game season. They're almost cracking that 90-point total, which again would have been great to see, but just shy of that number there after a even not great season for Panarin there. At moments, he definitely didn't play that great or near his best, and he still ended up having 89 points on the season there, 37 goals, 52 assists, so still put up some phenomenal numbers, even though did have himself, I would say, a not great overall season, just like many other New York Rangers players. And now for some actual contract comparables here to really see what a potential contract extension could look like for Artemi Panarin if he does decide to sign one this offseason. So we end up seeing here Claude Giroux, for example. He signed a 3-year deal a couple years ago now, which was $6.5 million cap hit per season, which takes him until he's about 37 years old. And that original deal, the contract kind of cap hit percentage was 7.88% of that cap when he signed that deal, which equals now to, kind of this year's cap, which is projected to be about $95.5 million. So 7.88% of, this year's cap upcoming for next season there is about a cap hit of $7.525 million, which for Artemi Panarin there, about a $7.5 million cap hit, I don't think would be bad by any means. Of course, it's definitely more than fair to say Panarin is above the level of a guy like Giroux, but I definitely think, something around that number of 7.5 isn't too out of the ballpark for a potential contract extension for Artemi Panarin. Then you take a look at a guy like Evgeny Malkin, for example, who ended up signing a 4-year deal worth $6.1 million, which does take him until he's about 39 years old. But once again, we're going to take a look at the actual cap hit percentage, because this kind of takes a look at really and truly, when this contract was signed, back a few years ago, for example, what percentage of the cap was that player making. So when Malkin signed his deal, he was making 7.39% of the cap, which equals to about now, if you kind of take a look at next year's cap projections, they're supposed to be about 95.5 mil. You take that number there, you get the 7.39% of that, it ends up being about 7.06 million. So once again, you're around that kind of 7 to 7.5 mil range when you take a look at guys like Panarin and Giroux, and you kind of take a look at their cap hit percentage from when they signed their deals. And of course, now moving on to the third and final player we're going to take a look at for comparables here, and that is Steven Stamkos, who this past offseason as an unrestricted free agent left the Tampa Bay Lightning, of course, and joined the Nashville Predators on a 4-year deal worth $8 million per season, which will take him until he's about 34 years old. So a bit younger than those guys, of course, like Malkin and Giroux, but still, a pretty solid cap percentage there, of course. Guy who's making a lot of money, but is somewhat, for sure, around that kind of caliber of a guy like Panarin. And he ended up signing his deal in free agency, which, sometimes definitely inflates it a little bit. But he ended up signing a cap hit percentage of 9.09%, equaling out to about, on this upcoming cap for next season, for example, of that 95.5 mil mark for the cap hit, or total cap space there, sorry. It ends up being about $8.68 million on that, 9.09%. So that's not bad. I think, once again, these are just kind of trying to get a good kind of idea of what his next contract could look like there. I think these are some good kind of, basis for this kind of contract extension there. I don't see a Panarin, getting anything much more than what, for example, Steven Stamkos got there on a 4-year, $8 million deal. I can't see much more than that, of course, but I also don't see maybe as low as a guy like Malkin, for example, who got that, 4-year deal at, let's say, around that 7 mil mark if you kind of obviously use that cap hit percentage now. So I don't think he's going to get as low as that, but I don't think he's going to get quite as high as that maybe 8.68 mil mark, which, of course, is Steven Stamkos' cap hit percentage for this upcoming, offseason, let's say, for example. So I think in general, if I had to kind of guess what his next contract extension could look like for Panarin, my guess would be a 3 to 4 year deal around $7.5 to $8.5 million per season, something around there. And of course, it does depend, if he signed a 5-year deal, let's say, which is kind of pushing it a bit there for the kind of term. But if he signed a 5-year deal, for example, then you're obviously probably getting that cap it down quite a bit lower. But if you're going for a 3-year deal, maybe it is more around that kind of 8.5 mil mark, right? That kind of depends, of course, and definitely could have an effect. But I also think a guy like Panarin definitely might be willing to take a bit of a kind of pay cut there, possibly to stay with this team. If he does want to make close to that, 8.5, 9 mil mark per season, maybe the Rangers do decide to go in a different direction, which, could be possible. And I don't think it's a guarantee he gets an extension, but I definitely kind of hope and expect it to happen there, especially if he does or is willing to take a bit of a pay cut there, because if he wants the absolute maximum dollar he can possibly get, and he wants to go to free agency there, I think at that point he's probably going to be walking away. But I think an extension definitely could get done at some point this offseason there. And like I said, if it is, like a 3-4 year deal at around like 7.5 mil, I think that's more than fair and could be more than a good deal for this team. So in my opinion, signing him to a 3-4 year deal isn't bad at all either, because if you do sign him to a 4-year deal, for example, that takes him until he's only about 37 years old. So that's not too bad. I mean, it's not obviously ideal. That's not phenomenal, but taking him until he's about 37 years old there. And Panarin is a guy who, with the way he plays and his game style and all that kind of stuff, I don't think age and kind of as he goes along there is going to affect him as much as some other players possibly. With a guy like Panarin there, he doesn't rely on this absolute kind of top-end, high-end speed there to get the job done. He relies on his offensive hockey IQ there, his vision, his passing, his hands, his skill, that kind of stuff there in tight areas, just making the right moves or making the right passes. So, and obviously has a really good shot, which for the most part there doesn't just kind of drop off a cliff as players age. So, in my opinion, there's no reason to really think Panarin can't be an above 80-point kind of player for the next 3, 4, maybe even 5, 6 years possibly. Even as he ages into his late 30s there, I still think he can be definitely around or above that point per game mark for years and years to come still. With the talent that he has there, with his kind of play style, I don't think it's going to affect him too much. Now, of course, the physicality is going to, maybe hit him a little more because he's not that big, tough, strong player, a little more as he ages possibly, but still, really and truly, I think he's going to be a very good player for many years to come, even as he ages into his, like I said, later 30s, which I still think he should be a very solid player. Obviously isn't going to be maybe as good as the past. Maybe he won't be hitting that kind of, 40-plus goal mark or that 100-plus point mark, but maybe he can still be for sure around a, 30-plus goal scorer, at least a, high 20s goal scorer, while putting up, 50-something assists around there, 50-plus assists. It definitely is possible for someone like Panarin, in my opinion. And now talking about a possible trade here with Artemi Panarin, I'm going to be honest, first off, I just don't think it's very realistic at all, and I don't see it happening. I would honestly give it like a 99% chance of not seeing him traded away, with the fact that he does have a full no-move clause, meaning he has the full and just outright ability to just decline any possible trade to any single team in the entire league. So to me, I just don't see him kind of, accepting that. I don't see the Rangers kind of really forcing and pushing for a trade with Panarin as well, because I do think he's a guy who very well could end up signing an extension here on a somewhat, decent deal as well for the team-wise. So in my opinion, I do not see a trade happening here with Panarin. I know there have been some kind of rumors floating around and some kind of talk around it, but really and truly, with that full no-move clause, I just don't see it happening, and I don't see it being realistic, although it'd be nice maybe to open up like about 11.6 million cap space there. You're probably getting back like a first round pick and some other really good stuff or whatever. I don't know exactly what the package would be. Maybe it's a really solid young player and some other stuff. Maybe it's a first round pick and some other stuff. I don't exactly know, but you'd be able to get back a lot of good value, obviously, especially if you were retaining some money on that contract. But really and truly, I just don't see it happening. This team is in a scenario right now where I think they're still trying to compete for a cup and want to push for it. So I just don't see them trading away a guy like Panarin there, who is this team's leading point producer, and season in and season out is going to be up there around that point per game, 90-point mark for sure. So I really don't see a trade happening with the bread man. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely don't forget to click that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content. And of course, don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on the New York Rangers possibly, trading Panarin away. Do you think it's realistic? I personally don't. And also, what do you think a contract extension could look like for Panarin there? Do you think a 3-4 year deal around that 7.5 to 8.5 mil mark is somewhat realistic? Let me know your thoughts. I'll catch you next one, and let's go Rangers.